Welcome to Complete Car and welcome to Bavaria, where we are appropriately driving the newest machine from Bavarian Motorworks, from BMW of course. This is the new M5 Saloon. And I say saloon specifically because there is a touring estate version as well, which we'll be driving a little bit later on. But for now we have the four-door M5, the classic, 40 years on from the original E28. It is the acme of the BMW Super Saloon. This one, of course, is V8 powered. Well, not quite V8 powered. It is a V8, but it's also a plug-in hybrid. There's basically the same powertrain in this as you get in the big XM SUV. But here in the M5, it is cranked up to an absolutely astonishing 727 horsepower and 1,000 Newton meters of torque. Now that's enough to shove this car from standstill to 100 kilometers an hour in 3.5 seconds. The eagle-eyed among you will notice that's actually a bit slower than the last of the old plain V8 M5s, the old CS model, which was one of the absolute best cars we've ever driven. But because it's a hybrid and because it develops so much electric torque, this is actually quicker in in-gear acceleration. So from 80 to 120 kilometers an hour, if you're in fourth gear, takes just 2.2 seconds. Now, the elephant in the room is almost literally an elephant, which is that this car weighs a lot, 2.5 tons at the curb. That's a lot of weight for a four-door saloon, even a big, roomy, comfortable, luxurious four-door saloon such as this. Now, BMW has gone to some lengths to try and disguise that weight. The suspension is obviously specially tweaked. It's got massive optional carbon ceramic discs, and for the first time ever on an M5, it has rear wheel steering. Those rear wheels can deflect by up to 1.5 degrees in either direction, depending on whether you're going fast or whether you're going slow, whether you want to feel like the wheelbase is longer or whether you want to make it feel more maneuverable in a tight spot. And it does seem to work quite well, actually. But we do need to head out on the road, and there are some fairly fabulous roads around here, and find out what this M5 is actually like to drive. Before we do that though, we'll take a quick look at the interior. So here on the inside of the M5, obviously it's largely the same interior as you get in the standard 5 Series and i5 Saloon, and to be honest, it's none the worse for that. It is, I think, actually one of the better premium car cabins you can get these days. It looks and feels more warm and welcoming than what you get, say, in an equivalent Audi, although there are some cheap plastics, particularly down here around by the door mirror switches and the electric window switches. But you do get this crystalline light bar that runs across the dash, which is kind of tacky in some ways, but also kind of nice. It lights up and does different things depending on what functions you have selected. You've got the big sweeping dual digital screen effect here. This works reasonably well and it looks good and all the graphics are quite nice. But again, it's a bit fiddly at times, could do with some more proper physical controls, even though you do have the classic circular iDrive click wheel down here on the center console. This being an M car, you get a bright red start-stop button, and you get the two familiar M1 and M2 switches here on the steering wheel, which allow you to pre-save certain settings. So you can say have M1 set up to be all quiet and hybrid and soft and relaxing for driving around town or just driving gently, and then you can have it as, you know, full feral mode preloaded onto M2, and with one click of that you're away. There's also a boost lever here. This paddle shift on the left hand side doubles as a boost. You click and hold that and it gives you maximum everything for 10 seconds if you need to, say, overtake something, although to be honest, with 727 horsepower, even in comfort mode, you're not going to be long overtaking anything. Now down here on the center console, you've got some extra buttons. You've got your M hybrid mode button, your driving modes button, your setup button, all of that. You can mix and match loads and loads of different functions here. Even how sudden and how violent the gear shifts in the 8-speed automatic gearbox are. More importantly, you can set this up to drive in full electric mode. It has a claimed range of up to 69 kilometers, and that actually feels reasonably realistic. Probably more like, 45 to 50 is probably what you'll actually get, but that's still not bad at all. You can charge the battery as you drive, although God knows what that'll do for your fuel economy. But actually the highlight of the interior are these wonderful high-back bucket seats with the light-up M5 logo here in the middle. These are incredibly comfortable and also wonderfully supportive, and also not always the case with sports seats. They're wide enough that a big bugger like me can get comfortable in them. There's also plenty of space in the back and a very generous boot out the back. Although again, if boot space is your priority, you might want to hang around and wait for the touring estate. One thing which is different to most 5 Series and indeed previous M5 models, you get a flat bottom steering wheel. Not everybody likes that, but it does actually look quite nice. And although it does have the traditional overstuffed and over large M Sport rim on the wheel, actually it is one of the better ones. It's nice to hold, feels good, and it lets that wonderful steering talk to you through the palms of your hands. Speaking of that wonderful steering, I think it's just about time we headed out on the road and had a good go and finding out what this M5 is like to drive. So can 727 horsepower really overcome 2.5 tons? And just as importantly, can it feel like a proper M car in the process? Well, actually the answer is yes on both counts, because I mean, yes, this is a staggeringly heavy car by any standards. I mean, it is a saloon with SUV weight, but it's so well balanced. The suspension, the steering, the chassis in general does such a good job of disguising all that extra weight. Rather like a fully electric car, you really only notice the extra weight if you're braking hard for a tight corner. And yes, then it can feel a little bit clumsy, but I mean, for the most part, no, it just doesn't. It's tweak the suspension up. If I put that in dynamic plus mode now, you'll hear a little bit of extra engine note being piped into the cabin, and this is how fast it goes. I mean, it's a stonkingly quick car. You never think it weighed as much as it does, certainly in a straight line. And actually although the 0 to 100 time is actually slower than that for the old non-hybrid M5 CS, by quite some distance actually, the crucial 80 to 120 kilometers per hour time is actually much, much better. It's actually just 2.9 seconds in 5th gear. So it's a searingly quick car, this. But as I said, the joy of it is that it still feels poised and balanced and sure-footed and planted and all the good things that you want from an M5. It seemingly, as far as I can tell from today anyway, and okay, bear in mind we're driving it on public roads, not racetracks, so we can't push it to its absolute limit. But it just seems to have no vices. It just seems to have no bad habits. It even rides comfortably. Yeah, it's reasonably stiff on its springs, of course it is, but if you're just driving it around in, normal mode without going near the sport the Sport Plus or track modes, it's pretty supple, very comfortable, great seats, great visibility out. It doesn't even feel too big. This is a big car, I mean physically big, quite apart from being heavy, but it never feels oversized. I mean, these are quite narrow roads, and it feels entirely comfortable and happy on them. It's the kind of car I would gleefully just take this car now and drive it home from Munich, because it's so good at annihilating big distances. It's not even necessarily that thirsty. BMW claims that with a fully depleted battery, it'll average around about 7 litres per 100 kilometres. And to be honest, I'm not seeing that as being too fanciful. I think certainly you should be able to keep your consumption below about 9 litres per 100 kilometres, which, considering the ridiculously potent performance, that's actually not too shabby. Obviously, the best thing of all is that it's 60 grand cheaper than it used to be, thanks to being a plug-in hybrid. That electric range of about 69 kilometres, probably a little bit fanciful, but you should be able to get 50 odd, and that should take care of most people's commutes on electric power alone. So yeah, it is quite good at being a multi-role car in that respect. I mean, look, it's not perfect. Yes, I'd much rather it had like a screaming straight 6 engine and weighed less and felt kind of more pointy and more alive. But what it does so well is to act as both sports saloon and GT. It really is that kind of continent swallowing car that can then leave the sort of small, lighter, sportier stuff up to the likes of the M2 and perhaps the next generation of M3. But I mean, just forget the weight, guys. This is a staggeringly accomplished car. Well, that's the new BMW M5, the best part of which is probably the fact that because of Ireland's slightly ridiculous taxation laws, and because this is a plug-in hybrid, it's now €60,000 cheaper than the old one. I mean, that is an entire extra car cheaper than it used to be, and yet more powerful, faster in certain circumstances, even more technologically advanced, and you can do your commute on electric power. Well, we've got lots more road tests to come, including of the M5 Touring in a few weeks, plus all the other cars that we'll be reviewing and looking at here on Complete Car. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and check out CompleteCar.ie for all of our latest news, reviews and features.